Hi, ArcfieldWeather.com meteorologist Paul Dorian here on Thursday morning, September the 19th. We'll continue to focus in on the Atlantic Basin tropical scene. I do believe there is a threat for the Caribbean Sea and the Gulf of Mexico later next week into the following weekend. We'll talk about some of the reasons why over the next few minutes here. It's still several days away, so many of the details cannot be ironed out. In fact, there's no system right now over the Caribbean Sea. This is the latest map from NOAA's National Hurricane Center showing a couple of weak waves out in the central part of the tropical Atlantic. Either one of these may evolve into a tropical storm, but right now they are confined pretty much to the open waters of the Atlantic Ocean. Not much of a concern. The area of interest, in my opinion, is right here in the Caribbean Sea and then the Gulf of Mexico for latter part of next week, even going into the following weekend, and perhaps even longer than that into the early part of next week. We'll be talking about what I think will be a strong tropical system that, again, likely forms later next week over the western side, the northwestern side of the Caribbean Sea, and then spills out over into the Gulf of Mexico. Exactly where it ends up in the Gulf of Mexico, just too early to be certain. Of course, we're several days away here, a week to 10 days away, but we've talked about this over the last few videos, and we'll continue that discussion this morning here. The overall weather pattern is evolving so that this will be a prime area for enhanced upward motion, and given the still very warm sea surface temperatures of the Gulf of Mexico and Caribbean Sea, that spells trouble this time of the year. And again, a very strong possibility of a strong tropical system here later next week going into the following weekend. And let's go through a couple of forecast maps that were posted by another meteorologist, Joe Bastardi, out there on X. And what we're looking at is from the Japanese model, the JMA, it's called the Japanese Meteorological Agency, and it shows basically vertical velocity. And what we're looking at here, in essence, is upward and downward motion areas in the atmosphere. This particular forecast map was produced about August 21st for the 30-day period ending just about now, September 21st time frame. And all this yellow here basically is downward motion in the atmosphere over the Caribbean Sea, the Gulf of Mexico, South America for that 30-day period that is about to end. And this is where the big change is about to occur here, from general downward motion, or what we call subsidence, to upward motion. The vertical velocity will result in upward motion on average for this next 30-day period, beginning right about now and going another 30 days out. That's why not only is this system a possibility for later next week into the following weekend, but really we could have an active pattern in the Atlantic Basin for the next 2 or 3 weeks or so. Now let's show how this changes here. Again, this is for the 30-day period ending right about now, and here is the forecast, again by the Japanese model here, for the next 30-day period. This was initialized just a day ago, yesterday, the 18th, for the next 30 days. And look at this change here. All blues here showing up, basically upward motion in those same areas that for the last 30 days had some downward motion. So this is a kind of a red flag for sure for this time of the year when you see upward motion here, vertical velocity showing upward motion here over the next 30-day period, focused on the Caribbean Sea and the Gulf of Mexico. And again, sea surface temperatures in those bodies of water are quite warm and above normal for this time of the year. And this change, by the way, is all related to what we've talked about here before. The Madden-Julian oscillation tracks a tropical disturbance that is kind of propagates eastward along the tropics on a regular basis, and depending on its positioning will dictate where upward motion and downward motion will exist. And in this particular case, the MJO is moving into a position that will enhance upward motion. And that really kicks into gear later next week. It'll be like taking the lid off the atmosphere and allowing it to explode in terms of potential tropical storm development. It allows it to develop upward motion in the same areas where there's been general downward motion. Again, focused on the Caribbean Sea and the Gulf of Mexico. Well, let's walk through last night's 0Z run of the GFS, and at the end of the video we'll show the surface maps associated with the 0Z run of the Canadian model, just to kind of show some of the consistency between those two models with respect to this potential tropical system. Wanted to take a look here, start off by looking at the 500 millibar height anomaly forecast maps here, because we'll talk about some of the players that will be involved in the ultimate path of this system. Starting off with strong upper level ridging over the Hudson Bay region of Canada. This is beginning the day here on Thursday, September the 19th, and a trough over the eastern part of the Carolinas, kind of focused over the eastern part of the Carolinas, again here on Thursday morning. We'll just kind of quickly walk through these 500 millibar height anomaly forecast maps and take a look at some of the players that will be involved next week. Here we are on Monday. This is a player of interest here. An upper level trough will be sliding into the central part of the U.S. We'll go out a little farther in time here, and soon we'll start to see the reflection of the tropical system on this particular model run. And here it comes, right here at the 500 millibar level. Notice one trough kind of scoots on rather quickly, well out ahead of this tropical system as it potentially ends up over the Gulf of Mexico. We're talking about a week away from right now, next Thursday. Another kind of upper level trough here over the northeastern part of Mexico. So these troughs may play an important role in the ultimate position. They may both end up moving on by or not getting close enough to even have much of an impact here, and we'll see how that evolves here. But again, just want to take a look here. The GFS from 0Z last night has a very, very powerful storm system over the Gulf of Mexico towards the end of next week, going into the following weekend. Again, this is just one particular model. We'll see how all this evolves, but it started off with a development over the Caribbean Sea, and then spilled over into the Gulf of Mexico by the end of next week, going into the following weekend here. And here is that one trough. Kind of moves on by and allows this to kind of move on its own here over the Gulf of Mexico. We'll go out a couple more days here into about 10 days from right now. This is Sunday, September 29th, and here is that system again, just on the one model run here from 0Z to GFS. And notice it's very strong upper level ridge moving into the western states at this particular time. That could end up being kind of an important factor as well. Now, before we get to see the surface maps, I just want to show the 850 millibar temperature anomalies. This time of the year, there have been many situations where you get a hurricane or remnants of a hurricane that slide out of the Gulf of Mexico or southwestern Atlantic into the eastern states and then off the New England coastline, and it's followed by a cold air mass. And that certainly is on the table here from this particular model run of the GFS. So it has happened many times where you get kind of maybe the last gasp of the hurricane season. I'm not saying that's the case here, but you get a passage of a strong tropical system and a cold air influx behind it. We'll see. That's exactly what this particular model run is doing here. We'll move forward here quickly, and a lot of warmer than normal conditions over the next several days over the eastern half of the nation. Here we are into the upcoming weekend. You get a little bit of a cool shot coming down the coast here in the mid-Atlantic, New England, by early next week. In fact, high temperatures on Monday and Tuesday. Level will be close to the 70-degree mark, well below normal. Places like Philadelphia, New York City, again, kind of a cool shot, a backdoor cool front coming from the northeast to the southwest early next week. We keep moving forward here, and generally warmer than normal conditions across the nation here. No sign of a cold blast yet, but watch what happens here once this system, this tropical system, passes on by. Here it is, kind of a reflection using the 850 millibar temperature anomalies here late next week or early in the following weekend here. And then it moves on to the north and east. And here we go. Here it is right in this area here. And look at that. It's just tied in with this cold blast. As we begin the month of October, by the way, this is all the way out now. This is speculation phase, but it's certainly something that has happened before, where you get this tropical system that comes out of the Gulf and goes all the way across the eastern states. Cold air mass comes in behind it. Sandy was kind of a scenario where that took place. In fact, as Hurricane Sandy passed on by, cold air was so cold that there was significant snowfall out in places like West Virginia on the backside of Hurricane Sandy some 10, 12 years ago. And here we go, early October, very, very chilly air mass. Again, this is all the way out a couple weeks from right now. Now let's go through the surface forecast maps, last night's GFS, and then we'll compare that to the surface forecast maps from last night's Canadian model. This weak low pressure continues to rotate, meander out over the western Atlantic. It is kind of slowed down to a crawl because of that blocking pattern we've talked about quite a bit here over the last several days. Blocking pattern to the north over Canada. And here it just can't push to the north and east because of that strong high pressure ridging out there. It just meanders for the next couple of days. This is all the way into the latter part of the upcoming weekend now. This is an interesting disturbance that looks like it'll perhaps produce some showers in the mid-Atlantic region late Saturday night time frame. It's a kind of a new wrinkle in the forecast here. This disturbance could have an impact, for example, on the Penn State football game. I believe it starts at 3:30 Saturday afternoon. Not out of the question that some showers late in the afternoon or in the evening across places like central Pennsylvania from this disturbance that comes on through. And then we go into the early part of next week, and we'll start to take a look at closely right down here. This is not a good scenario here. What the GFS is depicting here is this tropical system staying over water here, going just to the east of the Yucatan Peninsula region of Mexico and just to the west of the western tip of Cuba. In other words, stays out over the water here. It slides between these two land masses. That would allow for a significant strengthening. And take a look here. It's a 959 millibar low. And again, this is a week out. Just kind of looking at the overall pattern here. And there's certainly sending red flags here. 929 storm system. Again, don't be too concerned with the details right now, but the red flag is telling us this is indeed a scenario on the table, that a hurricane develops over the northwestern part of the Caribbean Sea and then spills out over in the Gulf of Mexico late next week or into the following weekend. This is all the way out now, about 10 days from now, September 29th. Something we'll, of course, monitor all of next week. And then it slides slowly to the north and east. And here we go. We have that cold blast coming in and blue snow showing up on the maps on the northwest side of that particular system. Again, we saw this a moment ago with those 850 millibar temperatures. This is a cold air mass to the north and west, but we're way out there now, 2 weeks ahead. Well, let's wrap up with looking at the Canadian model here. This is, again, from the same time frame as the prior GFS model, 0Z last night. Again, meandering low off the east coast, over the western Atlantic. Just kind of quickly walk through next week and see what the Canadian model is doing with the tropical system. Again, focus down here. Here we go. This is now next Tuesday, northwestern Caribbean Sea. And it, too, kind of slides that system between Yucatan to the south and west, western Cuba to the north and east, and that will allow it to strengthen rather quickly as it enters the Gulf here. And here we go, by about a week from right now, the Canadian model has a powerful storm system, powerful tropical storm, hurricane at this particular time over the eastern half of the Gulf of Mexico, and then it slides it kind of inland up over the Mississippi Valley region. Again, Don't be too concerned with the details right now, but certainly all residents along the Gulf Coast and all residents in the eastern U.S. should monitor this system next week. Monitor it closely because the overall weather pattern is certainly changing, in my opinion, to one that will allow for a strong tropical storm to develop. Caribbean Sea to the Gulf of Mexico later next week into the following weekend. So keep it tuned to arcfieldweather.com next week as we focus in on more and more of the details. That's it for now. For arcfieldweather.com, this has been meteorologist Paul Dorian.